Greetings and God bless. Sorry, my live stream kind of bopped out of there a second ago. So I wanted to talk about refugees, and there's been a lot going on in the news in 2022 about that kind of thing, and even prior. And I wanted to bring light to the housing issue nationwide. International investors have purchased property, different landlords and property management company own properties, and they warehouse them. Or people who are very wealthy, excuse me, will have multiple homes, and usually it's in a downtown area where it's walkable, gorgeous place, mansion they only visit maybe once a year, if that much. And so there's a lot of housing that is inaccessible to people that need to rent. And if there is something that's accessible that somebody can afford and that's walkable, uh, it's a very limited amount of a place that's affordable and walking distance to amenities. And I regard, so many people are bashing homeless people right now, tent cities and whatnot. And it's pretty evil, I think, because people are just saying everybody's like some sort of criminal that's a camping in a city. And what's criminal is the real estate racket that is um, uh, strangling the lower class people or people with a fixed income. And it's just very competitive, and there's no options. That's why a lot of people are camping. And the ones we see in the news or on YouTube, it's the most extreme people that are on display. There's probably government employees or hospital employees or whatever federal, or people that work for big tech companies. There are probably some that live in a tent because housing is so expensive in Silicon Valley or Seattle or wherever. And those folks aren't saying, they're not they're the very responsible people who have like a 401k or whatever. Like, it's just practical to opt out of this insane rental market that expects you to pay $2,000-3,000 a month for a place. People are living in their cars and whatnot. And my point back to this refugee thing is there's refugees in our own backyard. And, a lot of people are more concerned about people from other countries. And yes, that is, it's so sad, whatever tragedy is happening, whether it's a war or weather or whatever. Um, However, I do notice, and I have noticed, that there's people in our own backyard that don't have support. And the thing is, locals here are like, well, the government's going to help them, or somebody else is going to help them. If they're a responsible person, they should get help from somebody else. Um, and the thing that who they're supposed to get help from, it's you. And yeah, it's great when there's infrastructure. Like, I do talk about cities. It's important to have a bus and safe sidewalks, and a culture of safety when crossing a street and whatnot. So yeah, you do have to have that, and that counts for a lot. But it's my theory that we're just thinking somebody else is going to take care of people. And when a city is expecting, so I do believe that cities should have an infrastructure so it allows somebody of limited means to be able to be independent. And like, for instance, I'm living in Rapid, and I think maybe the people's mindset, if they are thinking about a pedestrian, they're just assuming, oh well, you'll just you'll pay $20 for every ride, one way everywhere you go. So yeah, you're going to spend $50 a day here in taxis. Yeah, that's really genius. Like, or I guess the people in the city think that you got to buy a car, or you'll never go out. You'll just buy everything on Amazon. So I think that's a bad kind of a city, because I think cities, the best cities are ones that allow anybody to get around, like New York or San Francisco or other cities, that so you could just pay a couple bucks and get to the store and get back within a reasonable amount of time in a safe manner. So, so I do think we need, like, that's a sane, healthy city that doesn't deplete you more for being there. And I think places that have no infrastructure for people who don't have a car, for instance, they really sap the life out of you. Like, I can't do very much because all of my energy is spent just enduring crossing a street, walking across the sidewalk. What kind of nonsense am I going to have to encounter? Uh, so I'm not sure if my idea is very clear here, but I do think, like, we can't just assume that some anonymous government worker is going to take care of everything, or some anonymous charity person is going to take care of everything, or that the person who just has appeared in your life, that it's up to them to just climb every Mount Everest alone if they're a decent person. Um, and I have been blessed with generosity and help since I've been here in Rapid, but the conditions here are just so brutal that it hasn't been enough, and it's left me so much worse for wear. So that's why I think, it's like a healthy city has to have good infrastructure, and just safe infrastructure for pedestrians, and that I do think people need to care about their infrastructure rather than just assuming that everybody has the same amount of resources that they do. Because I mean, how did San Francisco and New York and Chicago, like in other cities, how did they have public transportation? Like, how is it that that exists, and then it's completely an afterthought in other cities? Because I've lived in other places where, like when I was living in Missoula, and people were like, "Yeah, but there's public transportation, isn't there?" So they try to make me feel bad about the crappy, poor excuse for public transportation that's in the area, and they're like, "Well, just take that crumb. That crumb should be enough." Um, and it's just not. Like, it's just they wouldn't get rid of their car and take public transportation, and they wouldn't do that to their children or their grandchildren. But they expect, like, if you're just not wealthy, then they just expect you to suffer. And I just feel like there's this double standard or whatever, where certain people they're so concerned about refugees somewhere else, and the media hypes this thing of legitimate concerns, but the locals don't care about the refugees in their own locality. And and I think, like, in the refugees I'm talking about, for me, is the housing refugees. Because if you look across the nation, for the most part, there's very little reasonable, affordable, walkable housing options. So, you know, the housing that I see are in suburbs. So people have to have cars in order to be able to access that housing. And not everybody who's going to be renting can afford a car. And if they can, they probably don't want to spend more money on some, you know, slum out in the suburbs somewhere. So, uh, and yeah, I just think that there's so much greed right now. I mean, I know there's always been greed, but it seems like it's much worse now. And everybody seems to be like, oh well, somebody else will take care. If there's a nice person, somebody else is going to take care of that nice person. And maybe people are thinking that a nice person needs to be more aggressive to get help. And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I mean, to me, I just am like, if you have means and you're searching for a resource, people who have like rentals should, make them available within the economic scale of the area. And if you look on Craigslist, people are renting places for a price that would be like San Francisco type of prices. And the area is not that great. Like there's no reason to pay that much. And for me, I'm just like, I don't want to pay somebody's, not only my rent but their mortgage, and them making a profit. Like I just can't in good conscience throw away a lot of my income because it's a seller's market. Uh, so and I think I wonder. I mean, I think a lot of people are paying, and maybe they're getting like Section 8 or something like that. So they're getting government funding, I guess, because I don't understand how people are able to pay everything and pay these high rents when they're not. They don't seem to be making even as much money as the rent is requested. So, but maybe there's things I don't know. But my point is that just think about the refugees that are in your locality and try to help them. And if I was to say like everybody's in Airbnb now, it seems like everybody's doing that kind of thing. And when you're renting a space, 100 to 200 to $300 a night, that's one less home that your local gas station attendant or cashier or office worker or whatever, like that's one less place that they have to live. And people are complaining about entry level workers not wanting to work. Number one, they're not getting like they're not getting some type of weird subsidy. I That hasn't happened in like a year and a half. So, but people are still bashing entry level workers. And the thing is, entry level workers are still having to deal with this suffocation, identity concealment, breaking the cryptiform plate blood brain barrier with nasal things, and injections, genetic modification injections. And it's so classist, it's so entitled, and just these insulated, protected, ignorant, wealthy, entitled people think that, well, that's not a problem. Like even though they wouldn't do it for themselves, even though they're even advocates against that kind of thing, they're just assuming that an entry level person can fight all day about that. And when you're an entry level worker, you don't have a lot of energy, you don't have a lot of quality food, you don't have the supplements you need, you don't have the support you need. There's a reason why you're in this situation. And so to fight all these battles, it's unsustainable. And all I can think of is, Jesus, you have to return soon, because so many people are suffering. There's so many refugees from the greed, the real estate greed that's been going on. And, it doesn't look like there's any stopping it. People just want their Airbnb money, and, you can't take it with you. And God's going to keep this in mind. God's going to, He's going to know how many people you've stopped from having a home because you're so busy with this Airbnb profit model, trying to live up to something on a piece of paper that some person you didn't know or care about might look at, or so you could, talk talk up your neighbors like, oh, I'm making this much money in my Airbnb business. And, it's not, I'm not condemning commerce and capitalism. I think it's great. But I think that, like if I have this office supply that everybody needs and I say it's $1 million because I'm the only one who has it. I mean, is that right? No. You base your price on what's locally going on. And, if you look at different places where their hourly rate is, and then you look at how much the rent is, it's crazy. Because the hourly rates usually maybe $12 an hour. I mean, it could be more, it could be less. And then like rents are like 1,500, and it's like, so what are they thinking? And maybe everybody's thinking that parents are going to support, or grandparents are going to support, or Section 8, or people will just have to get married so two incomes can. Yeah. So, and and I guess people are maybe going to rationalize, well, they need that much money so they can go on their cruise to Bali, and they can do, have their Mercedes and all this stuff. And, people might rationalize that that's their survival needs, and that is valid. And, I don't think so. I mean, I understand like feeling like you can't live without your Mercedes or something, but, God gave people abundance, certain specialized whatever. And you're there to bring glory to God, not to create more wealth for yourself. You're there to create wealth for God. And I mean, maybe, making housing inaccessible to the lost and the impoverished and the widows and orphans, maybe that's going to bring glory to God. But I don't think that was his intent. And so I think what's been going on in the real estate world is shameful, and I just think that people are misguided by being so concerned with people from other countries and refugees from other countries, but totally attacking and demonizing the refugees of our own area. So thank you for listening. God bless.